one way to break down our application is to do so in terms of as MVC architecture, using MVC architecture. So very simple. All it says is you have three major components. M, what do we put in M? The classes that do computation. In here, we don't have too heavy complex computations. We basically have a read and a write to some data file. Data source, which is in our case a file. So in here, anything that is a reading and a writing, we call it a repository. A repository class. And this repository class is my model. So I use it to read and I write to the file. Now the view is the UI, yes? And the C is the controllers. So that's how I organize my application. So first, when I start, when the application starts, it starts from, when the application starts, it starts with the app.js, yes? And I run it from here. And then, in this app.js, what I do, I only configure my application. So first, I create an instance of this Express, which is a library to make it easy for me to create web apps. And then I configure it. I say, oh, by the way, I want you to use Handlebar as a view engine. I want you to use this body parser to extract the body of the request and put it in the body property of the request. I want you to, by the way, my views is in the view folder. In here, I can start putting my routes here in this app.js. A route, what is a route in this context, in web development context? So what is a route?
The class that takes it, the URL
that deals with the not a class. Basically, a route is nothing but a mapping between an HTTP verb, something like, for example, get, and a URI, let's say something like student, is a mapping between a HTTP verb and a URI, mapping it to a function, which is the route handler. So I say, if somebody comes using get to this URI, uniform resource identifier, this is the function I want you to call. Yes? I can come here and say app.get, put the URI, and put the function. I can do that, of course. But this, I want to keep this one slim and not too long. So that's why even the routes, I kick them out to a separate file, just for, again, modularity and for simplicity. So I put them outside in another file called routes. So I define them outside and then I come and attach them to the app. So the app will be aware of them. But if I wish, I could cut those from that file and paste them here and there is no problem. It's just a way of making my code modular. It is clear so far? So now for this route file, what I'm doing is I go into Express and say, please give me an instance of the router, and I will define all the routes that I have in my app, and then I'll give it back to you. I'll give it back to you, like this file will return the router already configured, and then what we do with the router, we attach it to the app. So when a request comes to a particular URL, we know what to do. Yes? Is clear? Now, here is the route. For example, if somebody comes to /students. So I could come here and start writing the route handler. Go and read the file, do computation, and return the result. I could do that, of course. But it's not very good to do so because this route suddenly will become very complicated and very, very long. It's already hundreds of lines already. No, sorry, 77 lines. But if I allowed my implementation to go here, this will become complex. So what's a wise way to do it is, in here I just call a controller. According to the MVC, when a request comes, it goes to the controller. The controller will decide which model will handle the request, and it will decide which view to return the user interface to the user. Yes? So here is, for example, my index. This is, if somebody comes to students, I will go to the controller, and the controller, this method in the controller. And this method, all it's doing, it is talking to the repository to get the list of students. And then it uses a template called students, a template, and it feeds it a list of students. And the template will go through and display this list in a dropdown. So here I'm just doing the separation of concerns into anything to do with the reading and writing to a file goes to the model. Anything to do with coordinating the actual handling will go into the controller, and the view is typically a template that will take some data and convert it to an HTML page. So don't let this confuse you. This is only a way of organizing. If it is confusing to you, go to your app.js and write everything there until you are comfortable, and then you will realize the hard way that this is not the best way to do it as your application grows, and you will be forced to cut and paste somewhere else to keep the app.js reasonable in terms of complexity. But if you are have the courage from day one, you organize it nicely. So, and that's what I try to do here. So I put all my controllers under this folder, controllers. I put all my repositories under this folder, models, and my templates under this folder, views. And here is my app.js. This is basically where I launch the application. And all my routes are defined in this routes.js. So this is a nice way of keeping things organized and keeping things under control. Is clear? Okay. Now, in the controller, for an application, any web application that you build, any web app that you build, you basically have two major types of users. Okay, there are human users that will come to use your application, or they could be other programs that will use your application. So if it's a user, what you need to provide them? A user interface. Because users, they are spoiled, they need a nice interface with colors, nice layouts, and hopefully they will be satisfied and will come back to your application. Okay? For other programs, they don't care about the interface. They don't care about the nice colors and nice tables or forms. What they care about is the data. Just give the program, give it the data in a structured way, it will be happy. So basically in an app, if it is human, you give it a view. If your application is accessed by another program, what I mean by another program, you could create a mobile application. Maybe some of you have done mobile development. And that mobile application needs to go and get some data from your web application. Your mobile application go and talk to your web application. In this scenario, the web application is only interested to get the data, not the interface. The interface will be created on the mobile device itself. So I'll give you the scenario of, let's say, QNB. When you log in, you want to see the list of your accounts and your account balance, for example. So the QNB, like a mobile app, like Android app or iOS app, will talk to QNB web app to get the list of accounts for that particular user or that particular customer. Yes? So in here, we call it, this one, I will return some data, typically in some structured format. And what is the most common structured format people are using these days? JSON. So not only it communicates the data, but also it communicates what this data means. For example, it says, this is the first name, this is the last name, this is the account number, this is the balance. So nicely structured. So you can programmatically convert it to an object and do more work with it. Okay, so in here, so my concern here is to create a view, typically using a template. But in here, no problem. I just grab the data and return it as JSON. Much simpler. Yes? So in this scenario, we call this a web API. And of course, we call this one a web UI. So web UI for human users and web API for other programs. So another name for this is also called the REST service. So different names, don't worry about the names, worry about more the concept. It's just different naming for this. Okay, so let me now give you a small example of this web API. So for example, I have this, so let me go back to the controllers, to the repository. If you see here in the repository, I have one method here called getStudents. Can you see it? So all it does, it goes to this file, reads its content, and then this content will be text, and then it goes and converts it to objects and then return it to the caller. All right? So I can test this. This is nothing to do with the web. By the way, the repository is not aware that it will be called by somebody in another continent or somebody outside our application. So this is just plain method that goes to the file, reads it. I can even test it. Have a look at this one. In here, I am importing the student repository, calling this getStudent method and displaying the result into the console. Yes? So this part has nothing to do with the web. In fact, the model is something reusable. It's not coupled with how we access it. Whether through the web, whether through a console application, it doesn't really care. In here, have a look. I can run this, right click, and run this program. This program is not aware that there is a web. It's just calling this function. So it called the function and basically returned all the students in JSON format. Yes? Now, this information happens to be very, very useful. Let's say I'm creating a mobile application to get the list of students and display them in a mobile app. Now, I cannot do this. I cannot call this function directly because this function, I am in my mobile app is here on my mobile, and this code is on another server, maybe in another country. So I cannot just do this way, like create import this script and then call the function. I cannot do this. Why I cannot do this? Because there is a network between the client and the server. It's not on the same machine. If they were all running on the same process, same machine, no need to have this web API. But because these are remote communication between the client and the server, you need somehow some communication protocol, and you need some remote kind of, you call in this method, getStudent, but you call in it remotely, from far away through a network. Yes? So one of the ways to do it is to do it through HTTP, through the web, through HTTP. Why? Because the web is already there. You don't need to invest anything in terms of you set up a new infrastructure and a huge investment to make that communication happen. You just make use of the web. So the web, we know the web, how it works. It's a set of resources that each resource has a URL. Yes? So all you do is you get this method and you make it available through a URL. And then other programs can call it remotely. You get the idea? Once you get this method to be called remotely, your method now is becoming what we call it your method is now becomes a web API, a web application programming interface, or a REST service. So let us do this. So to do this, what should we do? To make this getStudent callable from remotely through the web.
Have to have a controller.
No, not necessarily. Let's not confuse ourselves. Controller, yes, is a way of organizing. Yes? It's just a way of organizing. So what we need first to make this callable through the web.
Function with get, and it calls this function. And it
So what do I need to define?
route.
A route. So what do you think? What is a good address for this method? What could be a good address? Remember, every resource on the web has a URL, which is an address. What is a good address for this method? /students. Do we call it /getStudents? Why is that? Why not?
It's already the verb.
Because resources are
Nouns.
nouns. And how do we interact with resources? Using HTTP verbs. So we never put a verb. We don't, because we are interacting with these resources using HTTP verbs, we don't need to put the verb in the URL name, in the URL. It's not a good practice. If you do it, of course, nobody will stop you, but people will know. You are a baby web developer. You don't know what you're doing. So if you put nouns, yes, you are now a professional developer. Yes, because you know that resources are nouns, not verbs. And basically all right, so let me show you here. I can simply go here. I can simply go to app. Sorry. I can simply go here, app.get. I'll say if somebody comes to /students, usually if it is not for human, if it is for other programs, it's a good idea to put a prefix API. It's not required, it's just a matter of organizing. Whenever I see this API in the URL, I know that this will not give me user interface. Instead, it will give me some data in JSON format. It's just a convention, but you don't need to if you, okay? And then you say, okay, I will get basically two things Express will give me, which is the request and the response. And then I will write here a function to handle this. Okay, I could write all the code here. I could write the code to go to the file, read it, and return the content. I could do that. Nobody will stop me. But as I add more API and more routes, this will become complex. So it's much better to move this to my routes first. So remember, there is this front controller. Here it is. Here is how it goes. So when the request comes, it will the first entry point is the routing. And then the router will send you to one of the controllers, and then the controller will get the work done, will request the model to do the work. And then the controller will also choose one of the views, if it is for a human web. If it's for a human web, it will get the data, choose the view, and ask the engine, the template engine, to render the page. If it is a web API, it will get the data and return it in JSON formats, and that's it. So it's just a matter of staying organized. I could put everything in here. In fact, let me just put it in here. Because I already have a route defined, I will just call this one too, just for them not to be confused. Each URL, each resource must have a unique address. I already have API/students, but I don't want to do that. I want to give it a different address. And in fact, I can go here, not this one, this one. I can in fact come here and copy this, go to my app, and I can paste this here. And I need to make, because this one is asynchronous, I need to put this here async. Because I have a wait, this should be an asynchronous function. And basically, instead of returning, I use the response to return. So I will do here res.json. And return it. Okay? So hopefully if I run this, no, sorry, I'll run this guy. Okay, so it's listening on this port. I'll go there, and then I'll go to /API/student2. Fine. Okay? Without any controller, without any repository, without anything. So if you want, if it helps you to understand, you can start this way. Okay? If MVC is not convincing for you and you find it too complicated to stay organized and to break things into pieces, you can put all in one place, if you wish, until you get the idea and you get convinced that this will start to be complex. Then you can start breaking things up. And it's easy to break it up. All you need to do, let me show you. Sorry? Yes, like cut this one. I'll put it in the route. Okay. Let me put it here up. And instead of app, I'll be using this router to define, because I don't have access to the app in here. I have access to the router. Okay, and now, because this one is expecting FS, I need to move this one here. I'm putting it here in the route. Yes? Okay, I restart. No problem. This will work fine. No problem. So you see here, now app is nice and clean. It's not defined in the routes. The routes are defined in a separate file routes. Now, okay, this is good move, but still not recommended. You can move this to the controller, and then the controller will just first move this to a repository. And then, because if you move it to a repository, it's reusable. You can use it in a web context, you can use it in another application running on the same machine without going through the web API. Yeah? So I hope you get now the idea. So this breakdown is just to control complexity and to make things more modular. But you can do everything in the app.js if it's too confusing, at least to start with. Yes, please.
Quick question. When do we use route?
When do we use a router that?
Route and route.
Okay, very good question. Now, in here, so let me show you one way of writing this, another way of writing this. So another way, I can basically put here get, okay, and put here, this is how I will handle this get, okay? Is it correct?
Yes, we have two functions.
Yes, thank you. Yep. And this is how, let's say, this is how I handle the post. So you can see here the get and the post, both of them are listed on the same URI. So to make it easier and to make it like more concise, I say if anyone come to this route /API/heroes, if they came using get verb, this is the function to be called. If they came using post verb, this is the function to be called. So it is up to you. You want to write it this way, it's fine. If you want to write it this way, it's fine. But in here, this is common URI. I'm using here not URL. URL is something fully you can go and visit. Here it is called a URI, a Uniform Resource Identifier. So because this one is shared, I can just write it once. And then yes, اختصارا. That's it. You know, developers, they are so busy creatures, so anything that will help them type less and do less work, they will be happy to do so. Okay? Any opportunity to reduce the coding is better. Yes? So far is clear? the concept of a resource. So that's basically what I'm doing here. So let me show you now the proper way of doing it. The proper way of doing it is through, no, sorry. Where is the API? Yeah, here is the API. If somebody comes through /API/students, I will call controller, and the controller will call the model to do the actual work. Now, so basically, whenever I have an API, a URL that returns not a user interface, instead of user interface, it is returning a JSON data structure or a data in a JSON format, then this one, I will call it a web API. And why do we call it web API? Because really, I can call this one from anywhere from other programs, remotely. So it's a web application programming interface. It's also called a REST service. So basically, this URL is providing me a service. And I ask it for a service, and it returns me some results. So we call it a REST service. That's another name for it. Now this REST, I will explain it later on. Don't bother too much with it. Now this web API, sometimes maybe, let me give you another scenario. I don't want all the students. I just want, for example, this one. I just want this one. So I can pass parameter in the URL to ask the service to only give me this particular student. So I can basically put it in the URL. So this one is the URL, but this last part, is it a URL? It is a parameter passed to the URL. Yes? So basically, if I do this, I will just get that particular student. Yep, not any other one. So let me show you now how a web API can receive an input, a parameter in the URL. So here is the web API. So the parameters that is passed, I define here kind of a variable or kind of a parameter. I am defining a parameter in my URL to receive that input coming from the URL, coming in the URL. So I'm saying the last part after the student is not really a URL, it is a parameter. And then when I go to here, let's say this is the student, I can read that parameter using this from the request. So there is a request object.params.id. It will give me that ID that was passed from the URL. Yes? Let me try it another way, if this will help. Another way to do it. I'm not sure if it will work. Yes. So another way, this is old-fashioned way of passing parameters through the URL. It's called the query string. We discussed it before. You put the name of the parameter, question mark, name of the parameter, equal value. But more fashionable URL, it does not do this. It just puts the value. Yeah? On the server side, you define a parameter in the URI. How do you define a parameter in the URI? By preceding the variable name or the parameter name with colon. So, and you can call it whatever you wish. Here it is. In here, I can call it student's ID or whatever. In here, I'm calling it ID. Now, Express magically will take that value and make it accessible to you easily through request.params. The parameter name. So the Express is doing the magic of reading the incoming parameter in the URL and making it easily accessible to you as a programmer through request.params.id. Yes? Is clear? So far is clear? So a web API or a web service or a REST service, all it is basically a resource that has a unique address. When you go to it or when you call it, it gives you back an object in a JSON format. That's very, very simple definition. Now you can interact with it using HTTP verbs, either get or post or put or delete. Because really, remember what I explained last time, what is really the web? The web, as I explained it before, is a set of resources. Resource 1, resource 2, resource 5 billion. There are billions of resources out there. So these resources, you can request them. You can either get a representation of them, a representation either as JSON or as a web form. That's why we call it a representational state transfer. Anyway, this is more philosophical. It's a resource. When you call it, you get a representation of that resource in certain format, either HTML or JSON. And then you can use verbs to change the state of that resource. You can use a post to create a new resource, put to update a resource, and delete to remove that resource. So really, the web, if you look at the web in very, very high level, and this is what one PhD did, and he came with this name. So if you Google this, you will see his name. He says that this is very recent. So he looked at the web and he explained to us the web in a very, very simple way. A web is set of resources, resource n, and each resource has a unique resource identifier. And you can basically either get that resource using the verb get, or you can create a new resource, add a new resource to the web using post, or you can update an existing resource using put, or if you don't need it anymore, you can remove that resource using delete. Yep. So, for example, here I have heroes as another example. So here is my heroes repository. So my heroes repository, it is not a web as there is a web in the picture. It's just a set of code that read and write to files. In fact, if you see here, I can test my hero without even getting the web involved or the Express involved. I can basically right-click here and run this, and I'll get my heroes here, list of heroes here, and without any web involved. Now, for me to make this very, very useful functionality available to the rest of the world, what do I need to do? Make it available as a web API. And to do so, I need to create a route. And for example, if I want to get all my heroes, what will be the route? What will be a good name for my resource or my route? /heroes, /API /heroes. So here it is, /API /heroes. Okay, I get all of them. If I want to get one of them, let's say 1, I get one of them only. Okay, so this is not my only list of heroes. I can add, I can update, I can delete, for example. Okay, so through the web, I can only do get. If I want to post or delete or update, I have to write a program. Or, luckily, we have this utility here called Postman. Very, very useful utility. I can use it to basically test my service without writing any code. So test my post, test my put, test my delete. So here is I'm testing the get. All I'm doing here, I am sending and I'll get the same result. And this is to show you that I can access my services from other programs. You imagine this could be a mobile app requesting this list, and it's displaying it using, let's say, an Android app. Now, if I want to create a new resource, let's say, I'll copy this. So instead of using get, I will use post, and I will say using post, I'll go here. I'll say I am sending, just go to row. Let me just put this one. I don't put the ID because basically, yeah. Okay. I can do that, or I can go to the headers and I can say here content type. Remember the content type? And I will say here application/JSON. I am telling the server I am sending you a JSON. And here is the body. I don't put the ID. For example, okay, whatever, Scholar. And then basically my request is now ready to push. So you get the idea. I choose the verb, I choose the URL, I put the body of the request, and then I tell the server, by the way, I am sending you, the content type I'm sending you in the body of the request is JSON. And then I'll do send. Hopefully if everything goes fine, I should see server error. See here 500, the status here is 500 server error. It didn't like it. Why is that? Okay, maybe the app is not running. No, it is running. Okay. Okay, so let me try it one more time. All right, post, still 500, max ID 8. It's interesting. It's interesting why it is sending me 500. There is some error, but this has been created. It's just there is the way there is some bug in there. So in fact, if I go here, I will see this new one, 8. It was created, but there is a bug in the way it is reporting that the resource has been created. I can also go and change it. So let me go here. If I want to change, I will use put instead of post. So here is put. And in this case, I need to put the ID. So let's say I change the 17 and send.
It should be in brackets.
No, sorry, I have to put also here the one that I want to change. The URL is different. When I'm putting, I'm saying go to this particular resource and replace it. Okay, so let me send. Maybe my server is crashed, no?
You're changing the 6 to 7, right? No, 8 to 7. 8 to 7?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Here I'm just updating this with this URL. I'm not sure why it's not coming back. Interesting. Okay, looks like I have some bugs in my services. I haven't tested them. So,
Doctor, I mean, when you update
Yep.
the URL, you should add the ID of the previous one, right? The one
no, it doesn't matter. I'm just testing. I can put whatever, like 8 or whatever, whichever I want to change. I want to change the one in 7 or the one, let's say, the one in 8. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So it looks like I have some bug in there, but that's basically the idea of the service. Let me just quickly summarize it. So a service is something that is available at certain URL, and you can either get a representation of it, add a new resource there, or update or delete the resource. And you can do that and test it using this Postman.